Just checking my other platforms, make sure it's doing its thing. Twitter. I love Feeding the Ducks. That song. Hello to nobody. GM, wherever you are. As usual, if you want to come on and chat, there's a link pinned to the top of the YouTube section. You can click it and come talk about whatever you want. I have random stuff today to get into, unless I get a guest. Oh, tonight is our men's group too. A couple of hours in 3 hours, so I can stream for up to 3 hours. It's 6 o'clock Central Time, and it's on Zoom. So if you need the link, just email me at that address under my name, Gmail, primohex@gmail.com. My voice is doing this weird thing again. I found out that let me show you this. I'm a voice cell. It's this test you can take, and you talk into the computer, and it measures your voice or something, and it tells you if you are like how manly your voice is, I guess. Hang on. Look at this. I got a 148 hertz deep voice Chad, voice cell, and voice cell it's over. I'm not quite a voice cell it's over, but I'm definitely a voice cell. And people have been making fun of my voice for some reason my whole life, but then I have other people tell me that it's one of the best speaking voices they've ever heard. My employer loves it. When I was growing, like when I went through puberty or whatever, I was like Bobby Brady. My voice never broke. So all the guys around me got the man voices or the guy voice or the boy voice, and my voice kind of stayed the same. But I also have dyspraxia, and I was in speech therapy as a kid for what they call an articulation disorder. So it might be something physiological. But anyway, nothing I can do about it. Damn it, the garbage truck is here. I swear to God, this garbage truck in my neighborhood, there's an alley on the side of us with the dumpsters in it. It seems like it's there every day, sometimes twice a day. Like, what garbage company picks up garbage that frequently? They're constantly emptying those dumpsters. I guess I shouldn't complain. That's the first world problem to have, but they make so much noise when they come through. Anyway, okay, what all did I want to get into today? There's a fun little tweet on Twitter. Well, X, whatever it's called now, that I found. There's someone I follow called the Cultural Tutor, and he makes threads on art, architecture, history, all kind of interesting things. And he did a random thread on a random post on some facts about history that might surprise you. So I thought we could go through some of these for fun. And then I want to say something about history in some of the books I'm reading. Ancient people knew the earth was round. I'm not going to read all of them. 2,000 years ago, Eratosthenes calculated the circumference within 1% using a stick. Ancient Greece, you probably know this, was not a country. It was a collection of city-states. It spanned Greece, Turkey, Egypt, Italy, France, Ukraine. So an ancient Greek could have been from any of those places. The lives of medieval people were not quite as miserable as we think. If you made it through your 20s, then you could sometimes reach the age of 60 or even 70. Greek statues were not originally white, they were painted. Same with the sculptures on the medieval cathedrals. There's no evidence that Vikings had horned helmets. The ones that have been discovered predate the Vikings by more than 1,500 years and seem to be from the Bronze Age. The world was not always religious. There's been evidence of atheism, or at least religious skepticism going back for millennia, thousands of years. The pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus, who was before Socrates, like, I don't know, 500 BCs, maybe 600s. The universe, which is the same for all, has not been made by any god or man. So most of the ideas in religion and philosophy, politics, art, aesthetics, culture, psychology, sociology, they're not that new. Like Western culture has only developed a limited set of ideas that we keep like playing variations on. It's like the musical scale has one set of notes, and all the music comes from the variations of those notes and chords. Xenophanes famously pointed out, oh, he's the one that said that if the horses, is he the one that said that if horses had gods, they would look like horses, and that humans make the gods in their image because they come from humans? This one I like. The Western Roman Empire never exactly fell. The last emperor deposed in 476, but the Senate continued meeting for another 200 years, and the administrative apparatus also survived. It said it was more of a gradual fading than a sudden collapse and disappearance. Renaissance. Y'all know that classical culture it informed the Middle Ages. Like the Renaissance was not a rediscovery of it, that it had been informing the Middle Ages way before the Renaissance came along. I do think that it was mostly Aristotelian, though. I do think Plato, like a new emphasis on Plato or access to Plato, shifted some of the thinking of the Renaissance. People in the past traveled. There were global conflicts before the 20th century, like the World Wars. They had the nine years war, 4 continents, 7 years war over 5 continents. The second bloodiest conflict in history, World War II was the bloodiest, was 17th century China. Ooh, the story of Noah's Ark, because that's actually the story that I am reading right now in Genesis. He is in the boat. God told him how to build a boat. Remember, it's at least 2 separate strands of writing or authorship kind of woven together. So there's little contradictions. In some of it rains. In one, there's a big flood from the heaven, like the heavens open up, and remember he had the firmament that separated the waters. The firmament opens and the waters from the top pour down. The different time periods that the rain lasts is different. This one was interesting. In the J fragment or segment, just like in Cain and Abel, where he accepts Abel's sacrifice but not Cain, and there's not really a reason given for it, that inscrutability. He's fed up with humanity. He's ready to destroy everything. Not even humanity. He's ready to destroy animals, all the living things, because of his frustration with humanity. And except for Noah, and no reason is really given. And then in the priestly strand, it's because of Noah's moral uprightness. The story of Noah's Ark predates the Bible. The flood myth originated in ancient ancient Mesopotamia. The Sumerians even told a story about a wise man called Atrahasis, who was warned by the god Enki about a deluge intended to destroy humanity and advised him to build a boat in order to save himself, his family, and the animals. Um, and there's a lot of, like, in the creation stories, there were some parallels with Babylonian and Mesopotamian creation myths. In the Eden story, and the snake shows up in the story of Gilgamesh, which we're going to be doing on my channel at some point. Art Kroll's going to come back and tell the story of Gilgamesh. I have a friend, it's my Orthodox friend. We argue on Twitter all the time about philosophy, religion, all kind of stuff. And we're fighting over the Garden of Eden of story now. I invited him to come on, but he's at work. But I hope he knows if he keeps posting while I'm on the stream, I'm probably going to argue about it live. Because he's saying that the after they ate the fruit, that wasn't a punishment God gave him. He was just describing the consequences of their action. But he's the one imposing those, determining and imposing those consequences. It even says, let me find the passage. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. I will greatly, not that your sorrow and conception is going to get multiplied as a consequence, but I'm going to be the one to do it. That sounds like a punishment to me, or him imposing something on them, not just describing what they're going to experience. His thing is God didn't curse them, that he was just laying out the consequences of their disobedience. But it looks to me like he did do some cursing. He cursed the snake too. They even use the word curse. And remember, when he told Adam to not eat it, Adam didn't know what mortality is or disobedience, because he hadn't eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which would give him the knowledge to understand what the hell God was talking about in the first place when he said mortality and you're going to die, and not to disobey. So God kind of, at the very least, the most generous case scenario, he's not a very effective communicator, which I can relate to myself. But a worse case scenario than that is he was actively fucking with Adam and setting him up by communicating in a way that, to be completely effective, would presuppose that Adam had knowledge that he didn't actually have. So anyway, that's the Bible. I'm still in the Noah story, so I don't have much to say about it yet. But maybe tomorrow I'll get to it. So history. As you know, my guy, Northrop Frye, and I've talked about this book before. This is my favorite book on literature ever, and history of ideas, intellectual history, Western culture, Western intellectual, whatever. It's all, there's so much packed into it. It is European literature and the Latin Middle Ages by Ernst Robert Curtius. He was a German. There was this, it wasn't really a movement. It was really just independent scholars. But after World War II, and there was kind of several scholars. Some of them were European, Northrop Frye in America. They kind of looked back on Western culture at that point, in Western literature, and kind of tried to reevaluate it in the light of the events that had just happened, the horrors of the war, both wars. And this was one of the books that came out of that attempt. Northrop Frye's Fearful Symmetry was another. Bruno Snell, this is another good book. The Discovery of the Mind, about the same time. This shows how in Greek, the discovery of the mind in Greek philosophy and literature, that philosophy, what we think of as thinking and we take for granted as thinking, was actually a specific historical development that happened in Greece within the Greek language and no other, and then kind of propagated from there. And that thinking and philosophy were invented by the Greeks, or discovered. And he has a whole chapter on the subtleties and nuances of discover versus invent. And Eric Auerbach's Mimesis, I believe, was another work to come out of that post-World War II milieu, that immediate aftermath. So I just want to read, actually not a quote from Curtius, but he quotes, is it Spengler? Toynbee. No. German name, Troeltsch. He was a German historian. Anyway, just read the quote, and then I'm gonna tie it into some Northrop Frye quotes and maybe talk about it a little bit. It's about how data, when the data set gets large enough, how we're storied creatures and our brain works in stories and narratives. And when a data set gets large enough, the only format that we can understand and reasonably process it in at some point is a story or a myth or a narrative. This is from Troeltsch. The present state of our knowledge, which takes in barely 6 millennium of historical development, is adequately. And not only am I a voice cell, I can't even enunciate my words. The present state of our knowledge, which takes in barely 6 millenniums of historical development, is adequately served by a comparative method of investigation which attains to the establishment of laws by the road of induction. But if one imagines the stretch of history to be 10 times or 100 times as long, the employment of a scientific technique becomes impossible. It must yield to a poetic form of presentation. It will eventually become patently impossible to employ any technique except that of fiction. And I made a mistake. That was not a direct quote. That was Curtius summarizing Troeltsch. The only direct quote is it will eventually become patently impossible to employ any technique except that of fiction. And then I want to get into Frye and see what he has to say about that. Oh, wrong. Let's see. This is the collection of essays he wrote, just random essays that appeared in various publications on literature. This one's from one called New Directions from Old. We notice that when a historian's scheme gets to a certain point of comprehensiveness, it becomes mythical in shape, and so approaches the poetic in its structure. There are romantical historical myths based on a quest or a pilgrimage to a city of God or a classless society. There are comic historical myths of progress through evolution or revolution. There are tragic myths of decline and fall, like the works of Gibbon and Spengler. There are ironic myths of recurrence or causal catastrophe. It is not necessary, of course, for such a myth to be a universal theory of history, but merely for it to be exemplified in whatever history is using it. We notice that metahistory, though it usually tends to very long and erudite books, is far more popular than regular history. In fact, metahistory is really the form in which most history reaches the general public. So that kind of ties into what Curtius was saying about history, science, sociology, psychology, whatever discipline works with very large facts and sets of data. To be comprehensible on a large enough scale, or to reach the public, as Frye says, it's eventually going to have to be put in some kind of form of a story, some kind of fictional, poetic, mythological narrative form, whatever word you want to use. And that's how our brains work anyway. Like we're not working off of all the random data it's taking in. We're working off of a selection of that data that's packaged by our brain for us into the form of a story. And there's the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. There's the story we tell about what's going on, or like this self narration that's constantly occurring. So I guess my whole point that even caught my attention in the first place is just how much we work off of story and myth and narrative. And like Fry talked about how the earliest societies were based around telling each other stories, not only about the world as they presumed it to be, like the sun rose in the morning because it was a god rising up from the earth, or a chariot of horses being driven by a god or whatever, but also about themselves, not as individuals and as a group. And the stories are kind of what are the narrative was what kept the group together as an identity group, and where they found the meaning in their, like, the social, cultural, psychological meaning of the group. And then it developed into mythology, which expanded to begin to include everything it could possibly include. We see that in the Bible, we see that in Greek mythology. And eventually writing took over, written form, and then we could study it in a different way than just receiving it orally. So the humanities still has a place, maybe even a primary place, definitely a prominent place in our modern technological scientific age. We still watch movies, we still crave narration. We still turn to we don't live in this meaningless, empty, hollow scientific world. We still turn to religion, mythology, narratives for our meaning. And I guess that's the point I wanted to make about all that. And then I'm going to read one more little thing. This is from the book, Harold Bloom book I like so much, Agon. I'm part of the Crucible community, and I watched a lot of their debates, and there's other debate channels on YouTube, debate communities. And I always talk about how a lot of the debaters seem to be debating from ego defensiveness more than from an actual attempt to, like, determine or understand the truth through dialogue, which would be a more Socratic way of doing it. And I came across this passage. He's talking about Freud, but I connected it to what I watch on these debate channels. We can see now, because of Freud, that rhetoric always was more the art of defense than it was the art of persuasion, or rather, that defense is always prior to persuasion. And I talk about, like, I debated on the Crucible once on gay marriage against Andrew, and my impression from that debate, and then watching the others after that, was they're rhetoric over logic, or rhetoric over dialectic. They push their points forward through through persuasion and rhetorical art, more than they do through logic and reasoning out a topic. Although many times it appears that they are reasoning, and sometimes they actually are. But the logic to me seems secondary to the rhetoric itself. And I've remarked before how it seemed to be a defensive rhetoric, which, I mean, that's natural. If you're defending a point of view or a proposition that your whole worldview and meaning is resting on, you're going to naturally be defensive of that. And for book club, by the way, it got postponed this week, so there's still time. We're reading a Schopenhauer essay called The Art of Being Right. And that's exactly what this essay is about. It's about logic as the search for truth over rhetoric as the attempt to defend your propositions more than decide and adjust to the truth of them or not. And then he gives all the little ways that people use to do that. And I thought of that, the debate channels too, when I was reading that. So there's still time if you want to read that essay and discuss it with us Sunday. We meet Sunday 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock Central. Yeah, 1 o'clock Central. So email me, primalhex@gmail.com. and I can send you the essay and the link to the book club. Okay, that is all of the like book stuff I have for today. Another thing I wanted to talk about that's been on my mind lately. I'm doing another one of those warrior weekends in October. I did my it used to be the Wild Man weekend. Now it's called the New Warrior Training Weekend through the Mankind Project, which is an international men's organization. I did my weekend, my initiatory weekend in July. And so in October, what I'm going to do is staff a weekend for new men coming in that are doing their warrior training. And I've talked before on the stream about my frustrations with the Mankind Project so far and trying to find my place in it. And these frustrations started on my weekend. It like half the weekend was spent trying to get my footing in their way of doing things, like the Mankind Project culture, and figuring out if I even belong there at all. The two things that are keeping me from, I guess, assimilating, or what do they call it, social confluence, for finding that confluence, is there's a heavy emphasis on protocol and process, on ritual, on ceremony. And remember, I was in the same movement in the 90s when it was centered around Robert Bly, the Wild Man, Joseph Campbell, and the hero's journey. And it's still centered on the hero's journey, but it just looks very differently. And it was not so process heavy in the 90s. Now, one of the reasons I'm told that it has gotten so highly ritualized and kind of micromanaged and structured is for safety reasons, which is my second point of resistance to the Mankind Project, which is the safetyism. And I'm all for keeping things safe in person, physical safety. That's where you have security guards, you have bouncers at clubs, you have cops you can call if things, break out. I don't understand the kind of safety they're talking about when you're on an online Zoom call and nobody's physically at risk. There's still a need for something called safety, and there's still a need for all of these processes and protocols to ensure that safety. That's what I'm having a hard time with. So I wanted to talk a little bit about process and safety, those two things, protocol, process, and safety. And one way I thought I would start is, I went to that little residential school in my teens for gifted people, and it was mostly focused on giftedness, neurodivergence. Nobody really talked about that or really knew what it was, autism, ADHD, all of that. But there were a few of us there who I would say were neurodivergent, in addition to the giftedness, which I think is also a form of neurodivergence anyway. I mean, it's definitely shows up at one end of the bell curve, several deviations away from the norm. So that alone to me is enough to call it neurodivergence. And I had he ended up becoming a mentor. He was my dorm counselor initially and my debate teacher. I took debate with him for 1 year and learned a lot from him. He was the first, and remember, we didn't know it at the time, but the first autistic or neurodivergent adult who was also gifted that I had come in contact with. And we stayed in touch throughout the years, and he became a mentor. He had a way of understanding me because of his own neurodivergence that a lot of the other people from that program necessarily didn't. So we kind of had this special type of mentorship relationship that was a little bit different from the one I had with all of the other people at that program. His name is, I don't know what he goes by on Amazon. He ended up writing a science fiction series called Man of War. I know him as he goes by H. Paul Hansinger. So he became this science fiction author. His wife writes a fantasy series. We lost him during COVID. He ended up getting COVID. He had many health complications before that, and COVID was the thing that finally put him in the hospital, and he never did come out. But I was going to play a clip of a video he put out on his channel about the writing process. And it's a really good video just about, this is kind of how it gives a good taste of the ethos they used with us at the school. It was very much about finding your own way and your own path and not subjecting you to predetermined rules or structures that may or may not fit you as an individual. But also it's an example of process in general and my approach to process. So I'm going to play a little clip of that and then talk about safetyism. And I'm still trying to learn the volume, how to get the volume right. It also keeps adjusting the gain on my microphone. Okay, this is Harvey, or H. Paul. Harvey Paul was his name. That's who I knew him as. Let's see what he has to say about writing and process.
People are continually asking me, what is my writing process? And I've been very reluctant to answer these questions, not because it's some deep, dark secret, which it is not, but because I think a lot of people who get this are simply going to try to emulate it slavishly, and when it doesn't work for them, they're going to think that they can't write. I know this because back before I started doing what I do now in terms of writing, many years ago, I read books about how to write, and I sat down and tried to implement those methods and came up with absolutely nothing. My wife, who's a tremendously good writer, tried the same thing. She came up with nothing. My father, who was an excellent writer, did the same thing. He came up with nothing. And so what I'd like to talk to you today is the opposite of this issue. That is, that no one can tell you how to write. All these books that say you have to write an outline, all these books that say you have to spend time on detailed character sketches, well, maybe you do and maybe you don't. But someone who says that you have to is full of it. I mean, literally full of it. No one knows how you have to write. No one knows how you can do your best work. If I were to sit down and write a book about how to write a good book, I could not write about how you write a good book. Now, I could write about how I write a book. I could write about how all these other authors write a book, but I could not write about how you write a book because I don't know that. Everybody has their own individual, separate writing process. You need to find what works for you. Get 20 books about how to write books. Look at all the methods. Try them all. Try something different. Mix and match. Experiment. But don't ever think that because someone else's method of writing books does not work for you, that you can't write. Because that's, pardon me, drinking beer here, simply not true. You have to experiment, you have to try different things, you have to find what works for you. And when you find it, stick with it. Seriously, stick with it. Because you're going to produce something and you're going to put it out there, and then people are going to say, well, you know, I've read this book and it's kind of disorganized. It would be better organized if this person wrote from an outline, or these characters aren't well developed. You know, if this person worked from a character sketch, then this would be a better book. Baloney. If it works for you, use it. If it doesn't work for you, throw it away. Don't listen to anyone's advice about process unless it works for you, because you are the writer. Everybody is an individual. And here's another thing about writing. There are people...
Okay, that's the part I wanted to show. Especially with neurodivergent people, which I am one and I work a lot with, we're not cookie cutter. You can't just fit us into these existing structures and think. The autism community, the local autism community, is called the square pegs because that's exactly what we're like. We're square pegs that people keep trying to force into round holes. You have to kind of let us find our own path at our own process. It's like the ants, and they all follow the little ant trail, and we're following a completely different little scent trail than all the other ants. So you have to let us follow our own trail. You can't force us onto a trail that we are not cognizant of, because our minds and brains are leading us to see a different trail. And that is my frustration with process. I don't have a problem with process for people who need it. I don't even have a problem with safety for people who need it. I need something other than that. It does not work for me, and I can't find it anywhere. I'm so suffocated by process, and I need a little space where I have the freedom to experiment and develop my own process and let other people do the same thing. And my groups are very unstructured. They're free form, they're open. People show up. It's like hanging out on the porch. People show up, we talk, we chat. The conversation has a life of its own. It goes all over the place. They might last an hour, they might last 3 or 4 hours. I'm there to follow the energy of the people that show up that particular day and time. I'm not there to pre-structure. I think I mentioned in another video that the school itself that I'm talking about, when he was developing it, this was like late 50s. He didn't have any preconceived notion of how he wanted to develop the school. He waited for the gifted children to actually show up, and then he began to build the program around their actual needs and values and what was important to them. And over time, with each new class, he was able to add more and more to the program. So that's how I work. I have to have the people in front of me, and then I can build something around the people as they exist, as they are, as individuals. Just have to suffocate by process. I love that. That's a form of technology, by the way, in machine. Like, I don't mind computer technology, but psychosocial technology, like processes and manualized therapy and all this kind of stuff, that kind of stuff, DBT, which is real popular up here. That's a technology I have no use for. I call it the mental health here, even in peer support in my own field, tends to be very technocratic. Like, they design all of these systems, these like cookie cutter recipes that they train you on, and then you can just take them and apply them to anyone if you just follow the right steps, and then it produces this outcome. I call that a technocratic approach to mental health or peer support, and I have no use for it. My approach is going to be different with each person that I work with, because it's going to be adjusted and built to who they are as a person. And when I was teaching special ed, that's exactly what I had to do with the kids. I had, I don't know, 8 to 12 kids in any given classroom, and I had to learn from each kid. I had to let them teach me how to teach them. Each kid had a different way of learning, a different way they needed to be taught, a different approach, and I had to adjust my teaching to each individual kids based on what I learned from them about how to teach them. So that's what I need, and that's what I offer. Okay, now I want to talk about in conjunction with this safetyism. I have the Wikipedia article on, and someone can tell me what this is if they have a better idea of it. Safe spaces. What the hell is a safe space? Like, I'm 53 years old. I've had 5 decades of life before me. I've never needed a safe space for any, like, what we had physical safety. You know, when you were at the mall, they had security guards. When you were at the clubs, they had bouncers so if there were any physical danger, you had a system of safety in place for that. But that's not what safe spaces are. Like, when people are talking about, I need a safe space, they're talking about something else. And I've been trying and trying and trying for months, if not years, to understand what the hell they mean by safety, because it's definitely not what I mean or think of when I say safety. So Wikipedia says that the term safe space refers to, this is a quote, Let's see where it came from. Safe place. Oh, from Merriam-Webster. Places intended to be free of bias, conflict, criticism, or potentially threatening actions, ideas, or conversations. That does not sound like liberalism to me. That does not sound like a free and open society. About free of bias, no human being on this planet is free of bias. That is built into who we are as humans. It's built into how our brains work. This is an unrealistic expectation. Conflict, if you know how to manage, I can't guarantee that my spaces will not be free of conflict. I can pretty much ensure you that when conflict does break out, we can manage it, we can handle it, or they can leave, we can revisit another day. So I'm not conflict avoidant or averse at all. Like, there's opportunity in conflict, and there's something called transformative conflict, where if you move into and through the conflict, you can actually come out stronger on the other side. Both all the parties involved. Free from criticism? Good luck with that, because I criticize everything. Like, if my brain notices that I say it, like I share my feedback and opinion on everything, and that is what I value from other people. The people in my life that have helped me the most are the ones that have been able to sit me down and very bluntly tell me the things I needed to know without sugarcoating it, dressing it up, sparing my feelings, and because that's the only way it's gonna like stick in my brain. These people want to be free from criticism, free from bias, free from conflict, or potentially threatening actions. I can understand actions, but again, we're talking about online spaces, Zooms, Discord calls, stuff like that, streams. There's no threatening action that's going to hurt you on a stream. Ideas are conversations. And that's what I'm encountering on the men's group, in the men's movement, is this need to be safe from certain ideas, certain conversations, conflict, criticism, all of that. That's not that I don't even think that's a healthy version of safety. I think that keeps people from growing and developing, and it keeps them infantilized and kind of stuck in this really sheltered, fragile level where they don't get the chance to build the resiliency that they need to move through whatever they're there to work on in the first place. So, had something else to say, but I totally forgot what it was. But yeah, they even have it now, like in some of the groups, somebody can call the words anytime they're feeling unsafe for whatever reason, they can call safety, and then the whole conversation stops and it doesn't move forward from there. So someone has the ability to put the brakes on a conversation for any reason if it makes them feel unsafe, feelings. And in mental health a lot, it also takes the form of trauma. And I have trauma myself. Most people I know have trauma. I don't. If you, nobody can predict your trauma, and nobody can guarantee your feelings are not going to get hurt, or you're never going to hear anything that makes you uncomfortable. That's just not reasonable to expect from mature, psychologically mature adults. So if usually I've seen it be in response when somebody's sharing their own story, an experience of theirs, something from their past, or even an opinion or an idea. People react. It's usually a reaction to something somebody else is sharing. So the minute your trauma is triggered by somebody else's story, which they have no way, like your trauma could be triggered by anything, like a coffee cup, McDonald's French fries, anything can cause someone. So if somebody's innocently talking about something and you get triggered, what happens is the whole conversation gets hijacked by that person's trauma. The person that's sharing something completely innocent gets stigmatized and made to feel that they've done something wrong. And then it starts to activate shame and guilt over something that there's no reason to have shame or guilt over. And the person with the trauma that's being triggered ends up taking control of the whole situation and in a way that doesn't give the person that's trying to share their stuff opportunity and the voice to continue to do it. Like, that's what I need safety. I need safety from safety. I was talking to a friend a few years ago on Zoom, and I was telling her some stories from my culture. Like, we have what's called a boucherie, and they used to do it at school. Like, I remember in like elementary school, second or third grade, they would let us out of class, and on the playground, they would release a pig, and they had all these men, these older men, and they would chase the pig, and we would watch them, and then they would take it behind the kindergarten building, and they had this big cauldron and all these tables with equipment, and they would butcher the pig. And we didn't watch them butcher the pig, but after they were done, they would feed us all the stuff they made with the pig parts for that day in the cafeteria for lunch. We would eat boudin, cracklings, which is like fried pork rinds, pork, all kind of stuff that they made with the pig. And that is an old Cajun tradition. It's something that our culture does. People even do it. Like, you'll get a bunch of families together and get a pig, and they'll do a boucherie together. And I was telling her that story, and she got so disgusted by it and she had to leave the Zoom. Like, the story upset her so much. But there's no way that I was going to feel shame or guilt over something from my culture like that. So she did the right thing by leaving the Zoom, but there's nothing that I needed to feel or do differently just because she got triggered by that story. I remember I had a Mardi Gras party in Seattle one year, or I tried to. Don't try to have Mardi Gras parties in Seattle. Let me advise you. And I was showing them some of the videos of the Mardi Gras I grew up with, like I showed the other day, the country Mardi Gras. And one girl there told me, she says, "Your culture is the stuff of nightmares." That was her response to the video at my party. And it was something like the hats, the capuchons that we decorate, she said look like KKK hats. And she was bothered that they were running around. It was noisy, and they were running around chasing a chicken. I'm not going to feel shame or guilt over that. And that's what this safety mentality does. It's unnecessarily stigmatizes things that are completely innocent. And then the people start to feel like people do that with systemic racism and now transphobia, where they make something you said completely innocently as racist, and they try to make you feel bad. You just hurt a black person or a brown person with what you said. And then you're supposed to be self-conscious next time you try to share that thing. So I want to go through the Wikipedia has some criticisms of safe spaces, and that's what I want to talk to, because I was reading through them and they're pretty much my own criticisms as well. So it was very nice to see that I'm not the only person that doesn't think safetyism is necessarily a productive thing. According to Thought Experiment by Rod Sterling, hell is a safe space. It better not be. I'm counting on it not to be. Are the place where you can idealize your own utopian desires until you get sick of yourself. I love that. Or until other people get sick of them, like I am. Yes, it is hell. Safe spaces to me are hell. And I have a new policy. If I'm on a call now, or in a group or whatever, and they start the safety shit, I'm out of there. I'm not sticking around for the safety thing. I shared this, I gotta put my banner on. Yeah, if anyone wants to come on. I shared, let me find it. I shared it the other day. It was that diagram that my friend made about the, like the different levels of self-determination. Where is it? Don't tell me. Where did I put it? Oh, I know where it is. I want to show it again because it very much pertains to what I'm talking about. Here it is. This thing. This is the levels of self-determination. And when you way down here, you have completely different needs from people that have crossed this threshold of independence and are more self-determined. These are not the people. This is where I try to work. I try to keep myself here. The people I work with, I try to get them up here so that they can continue to do their development, whether it's personal development post-traumatic growth, whatever. I don't really work with people down here because my tool set is completely different. It's geared more toward helping to develop resiliency, agency, self-determination, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems like the groups I've been involved in they build them for people here that are very damaged, fragile, have high safety needs, can't handle hearing a story or an opinion or whatever. So it's just like knowing your lane and staying in it. So when I hear safety, that's telling me that this is the lane that they're coming from. And my lane needs to be somewhere up here. And it's just me learning how to recognize that and then adjust back to my lane. Okay. I'm lurking but busy cleaning you clean your own house? That's impressive. I promise I will hop on soon. They'll love the discussion with Trad Culture. Yes. Yeah, I do like our discussions, which I get a lot out of hearing from Trad and talking with him. You too. All of you, really. This whole little group. I can't believe you clean your own house. I need to get tips. That is remarkable. Very impressive. All right, let me see. How do I do this? What was I doing? Oh, criticisms. Opponents of space spaces argue that the idea stifles free speech, which if anybody knows me, you know that that's my number one cardinal value. If I had to rank all of my values and can only pick one to keep, the freedom of speech would be the most important one. I process out loud. I need to be able to talk and think out loud without having people interfere with that or try to shut it down or micromanage it. I like to hear what other people have to say with any kind of interference or mediation from a third party. I don't need a third party to step. Where I come from, at least, adults don't need people to babysit their conversation. That's part of what being an adult is. We can manage our conversations just fine. We don't need a Karen or a Miss Mavis or whoever to come and micromanage and tell us how to have our conversations like they like to do up here and in other spaces that I've been in. The idea stifles freedom of speech or blurs the line between security against physical harm and giving offense. That's what I'm saying. Like the physical harm, I understand. I don't know anybody that would not agree that, yes, people should be kept physically safe. That is not what my argument is. The safety that they're talking about is the giving offense time. And when did not being offended become a right or an entitlement? That's never been anything my whole life that I've known as that's something that somebody's entitled to. These are people that must have grown up very, very sheltered, and they always had somebody to like protect them from offense and brush it away. And so they carry that expectation out to them in the world. But again, that maybe my lane is just as narrow, but that limits them to a very narrow lane if they can't handle contrary reactions, opinions, whatever. Why do what strangers think about you bother you so much anyway, or even affect you? Advocates for safe spaces assert that people subject to hate speech are directly affected by it. I don't believe in hate speech. I haven't heard any hate speech. I've been online for years and years. During COVID, I started doing the video, the Zoom, and all that stuff. I'm trying to think of one instant of hate speech. So what people are calling hate speech, I don't recognize as anything. And how are they directly affected by it? How does speech directly affect you? In what way? Because physically you're not. I mean, I hate to be cliche, but the whole sticks and stones thing. So physically, it's not doing anything to you. How are you directly affected by it? Other than you have poor coping skills and don't know how to manage your reactions to things. And that safe spaces help maintain mental health. How? They help maintain you at a certain level of mental health. But I don't think they ultimately help you to develop the kind of resiliency that is crucial to true long-term mental health. Oh, the coddling of their American mind. Here we go. Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff. We'll probably do that book for book club at some point. The valuing of emotional safety as a sacred cause ignores practical and moral trade-offs, exacerbates political polarization, and can stunt the emotional and intellectual developments of students. That right there, it stunts. It has a stunting effect. If you're kept in this little container, like if you always depend on people to create this container for you that you can remain safe in, you are stuck at that level until you develop the skills and abilities to move out of it on your own and start to face all the things you're like trying to be protected from in these little safety bubbles. Ooh, there's a lot of criticism. Stephen Fry, the British actor and writer, criticized safe spaces and trigger warning as infantilizing students and possibly eroding free speech. Not possibly. I've seen it erode free speech. I told you about the one Zoom I was on during COVID around the holidays, and we were talking about Christmas carols. And this lady said that we should talk about Christmas carols because a Muslim might come in and hear us and be offended. I'm not gonna not talk about Christmas carols during Christmas season or any other time of the year I want to. If somebody can't handle hearing people talk about Christmas carols, they wandered into the wrong Zoom. They need to go find a Zoom other than one that Jeff is on to be at, because we're not. That's what I'm learning from these groups. The needs and values are so different. They cannot coexist on the same call, on the same stream, on the same Zoom. I hope they can coexist in the same society. I hope our institutions are resilient and robust enough to allow us to continue to all coexist as one society. But they definitely cannot coexist in the same kind of therapeutic or even recreational spaces. Mostly because of the authoritarianism, because it gives people the power to take some kind of authority over the other people and start to hijack or control or redirect the purpose of why I'm there in the first place. Let's see. Safe spaces in education are criticized for making students feel unable to express their ideas. Yeah, that's what I never want on Zoom. I never want someone to feel like they can't be themselves and talk about whatever they want to talk about. That's more important to me than somebody feeling safe. If that makes you feel unsafe, and here's the other thing. I think underlying all of this safety stuff, one principle or practice that I use personally, and I try to encourage on my Zooms, is to assume positive intent. I assume that everybody's there to support each other for personal growth, and that if somebody's sharing, they're not doing to intentionally harm or offend. To me, safetyism depends on not assuming positive intent and kind of problematizing completely innocent intents. And people with positive intent get somehow like reframed as harming other people. So it's the complete opposite of assuming positive intent. If you go in there, even if you hear something that offends you or gets you worked up or triggers you, whatever, like Christmas carols or hearing about a pig story, they assume that the person did not mean to hurt you. And like I get triggered all the time by things. And every time, I don't think that the person deliberately said that to trigger me or even knows that it was a trigger for me. I'm like, they didn't know. They were just innocently talking about themselves. So I assume a positive intent. That helps to build trust. It helps to keep the group cohesive. So if you're going to go in there all suspicious and paranoid that you're about to get offended and everybody's out to like has the potential to offend you or make you feel unsafe, and if you've been like Zooming with people for months and months or years and you still have to go in there feeling like there's a possibility that you're going to be made unsafe, To me, that makes it harder to assume the positive intent you need to have more of a healthy and functional group. So that's another thing, that thing I have with the safetyism is it kind of discourages or prevents the assumption of positive intent. Let's see, brave space. So some people are recommending the word brave space to replace safe space. So let's see. According to them, brave spaces have several characteristics: controversy with civility. I don't have a problem with controversy, and I'm not that big on civility in the first place because it's subjective, and different cultures and different class levels have different ideas of what civility is and who gets to decide. Do the upper middle class people get to have their version of civility deferred to automatically? Because that seemed to be what they expect. Owning intentions and impacts. I don't care. My intention should not matter at all, nor should the impact. So I'm already like disagreeing even with brave spaces. If I'm telling a story and I didn't intend to hurt you and the impact is that it hurts you, neither one of that is my responsibility. I come from a generation or maybe a culture where people were responsible for their own feelings. If you're having a feeling in reaction to something, that is your responsibility and your feeling. And feelings happen because they're being filtered through an interpretation, which is a narrative or a story, like I talked about earlier with history. You're responsible for the story you're telling yourself about that thing, because not everybody that's experiencing the same event is telling themselves the same story. So they're not all going to have the same emotion that you're having about it. And if it's trauma based, like it's being filtered through a trauma story, then work with a therapist and learn to manage that. And don't be a victim and vulnerable to everything that, like, if you have trauma and you're not learning how to manage it and kind of grow beyond it, then you are at the mercy of everything that comes out of everybody's mouth. And who would want to live by, like, that's such a imprisoning, passive form of victimhood to me. It sounds miserable. Who would want to live like that? Challenge by choice. I don't know what that means. Respect and no attacks. Again, attacks are subjective. People think I'm attacking them all the time, and that's not even in my head. So I want to strip it of all the subjective stuff. Keep it very, like I said, assume positive intent. Keep it internal locus of control where you're managing your own safety needs and your own experience. People on my groups, I don't babysit anybody. If they're on the group, I'm assuming they are a psychologically mature adult and that they can manage their own experience. If they need to turn the camera off, if they need to take a break, they need to step away. Some of the Zooms have breakout rooms where you can go in a breakout room and talk it over with somebody. If you're on a stream, you could leave, sign off, take a break, come back later, whatever. I assume that adults have the agency and the locus of control to manage all that for themselves, that there's nothing I need to do. My job is to keep the Zoom running, open it on time, be welcoming, show hospitality, make people feel, comfortable about being there, develop some trust, get the conversation going. It's not to babysit grown adults' feelings. That's just not any responsibility I've ever taken on, and no one around me has either. I guess in the South, we're just very sovereign. Each person is their own sovereign, and adults don't really presume to interfere with somebody's self-sovereignty. Okay, that's it for safe spaces. I'm kind of exhausted talking about it. Let's see if there's anything on Twitter. Well, my friend is stopped fighting about the Bible, so there's nothing there. Is there anything going on in the world today? Here, I want to see this video about Chicago. I don't know what it is, but it just came across my feed. Let's see what's going on in Chicago.
I wanted to know if there is a capacity limit. And what is that limit, if there is one? And why can't we close the borders of Chicago or the state of Illinois in the first place? Why can't we close the borders?
I don't know if there's a limit. I do know that when you are seeking asylum, you are granted protections from the U.S. to not return. So that is the process that folks are going through when they come here, when they get their interview, and then the Texas governor sends them to Illinois, and specifically Chicago.
So they get to come, once they do an interview in Texas, they get to come regardless. Texas says, you're an asylum seeker, you're being persecuted, so yeah, you can leave your country and come here and go wherever you want.
Not Texas. This is the federal government is the one that does the process around asylum seeking. It is Texas who is making the decision to send them to Chicago.
And that's what I wanted to know. Can we say, no, we won't take anymore?
It has to come from the federal government.
Okay. Well, that's not really what I thought it was. That's asylum. And I don't really know how that works. So. No, not much going on Twitter. Well, I still have a couple of hours to go that I'm able to stream. I thought about streaming, doing an evening stream just to see if it brings a different crowd. In fact, I might try that tonight after the men's group. One day when I have enough people who want to give it a try, I might even stream the men's group. Because we have some pretty important conversations there too that I think people would benefit from. It would be a time when everybody all wanted to do it and agreed to it. Anything else coming up? Men's group tonight, 6 o'clock. And the men's group is that's my group that I run, so you don't have to worry about safetyism or anything like that on it, or protocol or process. It's just we just talk. No, not really. Tomorrow, I think we watch movies on Thursdays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. I think we're going to do Nurse Betty with Renee Zellweger. It's a dark comedy about a lady with some trauma, PTSD, except they put a comedic spin on it instead of a tragic spin, although the trauma is pretty awful. That's going to be at 5:30-ish tomorrow. And anytime I announce something on here, I had a calendar at one point, but people were having trouble accessing it. Just email me and I can hook you up with the event, or contact me on Twitter, whatever. Well, let me check YouTube. Jim Bob is still streaming. Well, let me let's do a little musical interlude while I figure out what I want to do. I would play music and stuff, but I don't want to risk copyright violations. See, I was stuck with the StreamYard music. Why does it keep lowering my gain? When I play the streams back, I can barely hear myself, and it keeps bumping my gain down. I'm going to uncheck this setting that says to adjust my volume. Maybe it'll leave it alone. I'm going to bump it up a little bit too. If you're on the stream or you watch it back or something, leave a comment and let me know if it's too loud. That's the one frustrating thing I don't like about StreamYard, is it makes it hard to... The volume levels, to me, don't sound like the same that the viewers are hearing. And it makes it hard to determine. You kind of just have to guess. I'm going to also try reducing background noise to see if that helps. There's not a lot of background noise around here other than that damn garbage truck that keeps coming by. Oh, I was playing around with logos the other day and forgot all about it. How's that one? I want it to be colored, something colored. I don't like the square logos. I definitely like... Okay, musical interlude is over. Oh, wait, what? Oh, tonight I'll be at the men's group, but at 7 p.m. Central, P.F. Young is going to be... He started doing a weekly stream with J.J. McCullough from Canada. So he's going to be talking to him tonight. He says, I'm currently being harassed and targeted by a YouTube channel, almost 1 million subscribers. They have declared me and my audience to be right-wing freakazoids. I will be confronting this heathen tonight at 7 p.m. Central on my live stream. I'll watch the end of it if my group ends early enough. And then there might be... Is there a Crucible debate tonight? Let's see. What's today? 18? No, there's one. There's a trash talk tomorrow. Nope. P.F. Young, that's all you get tonight, unless I stream later, which I guess I won't be doing while he's doing JJ. I might do a late night stream, although I do have to work tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I might find a video to play while I take a little intermission for myself. Let me see what my options are. I gotta be copyright mindful. I wonder if my friend David would mind if I play his lecture on the brain. I better not. I have some music videos I could play, but I can't play them. I can, but I don't want the copyright thing. There's some satanic rap. John and Rowan might not mind if I play some of their conversation. I think I will. This is what John has, this thing he calls an ipso map that helps people have conversations and find the parts where they agree and disagree on. It gets real technical and real nerdy, but y'all might like it. It's something to watch. And I think I'm going to maybe take 5 and get some more water and shake out my brain. So let me get that playing.
Yeah, I would say so.
This is starting like midstream, so wherever they're at in the conversation.
Can I give an example? Because like to me,
Yeah.
Matt Walsh is like hard left, almost
Matt Walsh.
sorry, hard right, but not that close to extreme right to me. He's hard right. Some of his things start to really step into it, but I wouldn't like he's not Nick Fuentes. Right?
Okay,
Like,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
dip
yeah,
out
to
for
me,
a
that's
second.
fair.
so there's Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson I'd say is much closer to the middle than someone like Matt Walsh is, based off my understanding, and so that's why I think it's like that spectrum. I think I do see it a little differently than you, but if you think Destiny and say Jordan Peterson are that far apart, I would disagree with you. I think. Sorry, but you were gonna share something.
I'm trying to figure out how to share this thing, but I don't. I think I just have to share the whole screen. I can't just share one thing. Here, let's try this really quick. Can I share? Oh, whatever. I'll share my screen for a second. Okay, here I drew this a long time ago. I'm not sure if you can read it, but this is just,
Can you zoom in one more time?
like that.
I think I can kind of get it. Yeah.
I made this a while back.
Center, liberals, conservatives, solidly left. Oh, so very similar to what I was saying.
Yeah, so this is kind of how I would look at it. And this part of who votes in what direction is important to me, because who they end up voting for is a huge thing. If like you look at the policy agenda of the GOP for 2025 compared to what Biden wants to do, and these are vastly different worlds. And so that it's important where people actually end up voting and what is the outcome of their choices.
Okay.
But yeah, so this looks like to me what Paul is saying is that here's the middle. I look at it like this, which is kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, like I would say liberals, center, and conservatives would be what I would call the enlightened centrists. And then you have I guess solidly right and solidly left is where I would say people stop being centrists.
Okay.
That would be more my conception.
So here's kind of what I wrote at the bottom here, that if Destiny, pro-choice, pro-universal healthcare, pro-universal college, pro-union, believes in climate change, systemic racism, drug decriminalization, wealth redistribution.
What do you mean when you say believes in climate change? Because that's a term I don't think we share a definition of.
That he believes that, and here I'll stop sharing for a second just because I think the point has been made, that he believes that humans through carbon emissions are causing a significant impact on
specifically anthropogenic climate change.
Yes, and I did do a video on this as well. That he believes that it's anthropogenic and humans are causing it, and that we need to do something about it to curb those emissions and transition over to green energy eventually. And Dave Rubin thinks that's just a bunch of complete hooey. So,
okay, not to defend Dave Rubin, but like to me, there's like a wide spectrum of people's opinions on climate change. I would not call myself a climate change alarmist. And I think to a lot of people, that means I don't believe in climate change. And that's one of the things is like, okay, I in this topic in particular, I want to be precise because I think it's particularly thorny, because I would imagine, no, I'm not gonna use Dave Rubin as an example because I don't follow him enough. But like, I'll give Jordan Peterson an example because he obviously has gotten a lot of controversy because of the things he said about climate change. And my understanding of his position is that the climate is changing. Humans probably have something to do with it, not a crazy.
Okay, I'm back. Maybe I will end early because that'll give me a chance to eat and everything before my meeting. I'm just not ready to stop. I get a lot out of these streams. I get a lot out of talking through things that are in my own head, and I definitely get a lot out of having other people on. That's where I think the real good stuff happens. Eventually, I'd like to work up into marathon streams that some people do all-night streams or all-day streams. We did that during COVID. We had a Zoom. We kept going for 24 hours if we could, that people could drop in on. So maybe have like a 24-hour stream that's always open. I also need to figure out where to promote it, because I have it on Twitter and Facebook, but no one ever watches it there. And I have it on, I post it on a few Discords. I try not to overdo it, so I don't post every one. But finding other places to let people know that it's an opportunity for them to come on and talk. Whoa. Sorry, I'm catching up on social media. All right, I'm going to make another pass on Twitter and just see if anything's happening. Probably not. Nope. I do notice that the trans thing seems to be. I don't want to get too excited, but it seems to be dying down. I'm seeing less and less about it. First it dominated social, like everywhere you turn, it was trans this and trans that. I'm not really seeing a lot of it anymore. Dylan Mulvaney, I don't see posting a lot. Not that I follow him, but people constantly share his posts. A lot of the they had some gay accounts and trans accounts that would fight constantly, and I see less of that. So maybe that's a sign that the trend it was a fad. Oh, I know. I gotta find it. My friend posted a fun video. If I can just find it. It really brought back some memories. Yeah. Where my Gen X at? It's all the things from the 80s, like from my generation that I remember growing up. Hang on. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Why is a wall? MTV, yes. The VHS. Hubert. That was probably the Pizza Hut. Nintendo. That's the Merlin. I never had one of those. Garbage Pail Kid. I used to remember that. I used to collect rotary dial phone, Nestle Quick. I didn't even know that was a thing in the 80s. TV Guide, yes. That's how you knew it was coming on TV. The special, NBC. Cassette tapes. Teddy Ruxpin. Blondie, that was 80s. No, that little barn. I don't think that was from the 80s, but I had one of those cassette holders. That record player, we had that growing up in the 70s. Telephones. That was just fun. Seeing the nostalgia. Nope, not much on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Jim Bob is still going. News, culture, politics, and cults. That sounds fun, actually. Oh, he's on with Posh Redneck. Okay, I think I am gonna cut it short today, if nothing else is gonna happen. Thank y'all for watching. I'm supposed to say remember to like and subscribe, but y'all are probably already subscribed. But if you like, then it helps it in the algorithm or something. So if you want to, I don't really care about that. And when am I streaming tomorrow? I work tomorrow, and we have our movie. I'll try to do it tomorrow afternoon around 1. I'll schedule it for then, but if I can't make it for whatever reason, I'll do it in the evening, like maybe after 10 p.m. Central. We'll do a late night stream. Or maybe I'll do both. But anyway, I will have a good day. If you have topics or comments or conversations you want me to talk about or that you want to have, email me, comment, whatever, and we'll make it happen. I want this stream to be a collaborative opportunity for whoever wants it. Not everybody. There's some people I definitely don't want to collaborate with, but we'll cross those when we come to them. Let me get the music queued up. Let's do some rock today. Okay, I had fun. See you tomorrow. Bye. Oh yeah, Pretenders have a new album out. I listened to it today. It's pretty good.